If Leanne had taken a closer look, she might have realized that her latest man, Idris Nazir, is far from the charming, playful character he appears to be. In reality, he is trouble from head to toe. Not in an attractive, rebellious way either. Idris is more the ruthless property owner type. The kind of man whose neglected, mold-ridden flat left Alfie Webster struggling with serious breathing problems before he sent his teenage helper Brody Michaelis to intimidate the former landlord. So far, Leanne has failed to spot the mountain of warning signs surrounding Idris, which is hardly surprising considering her history with terrible men, such as her alcoholic former husband Peter Barlow and Nick Tilsley, who famously betrayed her by sleeping with her sister, Toya Battersby. On top of that, Leanne has had plenty of other problems occupying her attention. Her adopted son, Sam Blakeman, was pushed to breaking point after being targeted by pedophile Megan Walsh. At last, Leanne believes she has found someone who genuinely treats her well and enjoys spending money on her. Given everything she has endured, it is understandable that she has overlooked the huge warning signs that viewers notice whenever Idris walks into the Rovers. However, that could soon change. Idris has his sights set on buying Speed Daal, the curry restaurant where Leanne works, and adding it to his growing property portfolio. The biggest obstacle is that Speed Daal belongs to Idris Nazir, who happens to be Idris's cousin. Or perhaps cousin is not quite the right word. During tense discussions about the restaurant, Idris revealed a startling family secret. He is the result of an affair between his mother and Sharif, the unfaithful former husband of Alia's grandmother Yasmin. Even more shocking, this means Idris is the half-brother of Alia's late father Khal, who was also Leanne's former boyfriend. The revelation creates an extremely awkward family connection. Surprisingly, Leanne takes the news rather well, and even finds the whole situation amusing, especially after realizing that she has now been involved with two brothers. The latest family drama has seriously distracted Alia from her work at Adam Barlow's law firm, and eventually encouraged her to make a major decision. She is prepared to sell her share of Speed Daal, but Idris needs to come up with £50,000 to complete the deal. That becomes his main objective during next week's events on the cobbles. Leanne offers to lend Idris £5,000, which he gladly accepts, but the amount is nowhere near enough. He still needs another £15,000. So how will he get the rest? Rather than taking out a conventional loan, Idris comes up with a far more dangerous plan. He arranges a poker game inside Speed Daal, invites notorious car dealer and gangster Fiona Morley, and persuades Ollie to play against her in exchange for a share of the potential winnings. But Idris has no intention of leaving things to chance. He plans to cheat and secretly feeds Ollie instructions throughout the game. Cheating during a poker match against a dangerous criminal is already asking for trouble. Things become even more complicated when local police officer Kit Green decides to join the game. Then Fiona suddenly demands that the stakes be doubled. For Idris, the situation becomes an enormous gamble. But even that pales in comparison with what happens when Leanne discovers that he used Ollie as a pawn against a dangerous gangster, simply to raise enough cash to purchase a restaurant. Ultimately, the biggest gamble may belong to Leanne herself. By placing her faith in Idris, she could be making a disastrous decision and getting far too close to someone she should never have trusted. Following the disastrous poker game, Idris finds himself firmly in Leanne's bad books the next day. A furious Leanne makes it perfectly clear that he is no longer welcome inside her restaurant. As she walks away, Idris quickly follows her. Leanne confronts him over gambling with her money, but Idris insists that he cheated during the game, meaning her money was never actually placed at risk. But will that explanation be enough to convince Leanne to forgive him? Tim and Sally are facing another major setback in Coronation Street, as the shocking murder storyline continues to spiral out of control. What Tim expected to be a pleasant reunion with his cousin Richie quickly turned into a nightmare for one of Weatherfield's much-loved couples after the evening became heavily fueled by alcohol, leaving Richie passed out on the Metcalf sofa. When Tim returned home to a furious Sally, Richie was soon shown the door, and ended up returning to Tim's house for another night on the sofa. Encouraged by Tim, Richie headed back home the next day in an attempt to repair his relationship with Rachel. However, he accidentally left his wallet behind, buried among the cushions. Being the helpful person he is, Tim drove over to Richie's home to return it, only to make a horrifying discovery that is likely to stay with him for a very long time. Inside the property, Tim found Richie covered in blood, while the lifeless body of his wife lay in the back room. It wasn't long before Richie was taken into police custody and accused of murdering his wife. It has certainly been an incredibly traumatic week for Tim and Sally. With her father behind bars and her mother dead, Richie and Rachel's daughter Lucy was left as a witness to the horrifying events. She was initially placed with foster carers, but that arrangement soon broke down. Already caring for a house full of foster children, including the Michaelis family, Sally was understandably reluctant to take another youngster into their home. However, after seeing how deeply Tim had been affected by his cousin's alleged crime, Sally eventually agreed to let Lucy stay with them. Once Lucy arrived, it quickly became obvious that the Metcalfs were not prepared for the emotional difficulties involved in caring for a young girl who had suddenly lost both of her parents. Lucy was struggling with severe trauma and proved to be far more complicated to handle than the other children Sally and Tim had previously welcomed into their home. Her volatile emotions became particularly obvious during a confrontation with Lily Platt in Victoria Gardens. What began as a series of petty comments and sharp insults quickly escalated, eventually leaving Jody Ramsey injured. Next week, Shona Platt decides to step in and try to repair the relationship between the two girls. Although a seemingly successful lunch takes place, with Lily giving Lucy a sincere handwritten apology, Lucy remains desperate to contact her father. Her frustration grows even stronger when she discovers that Joni and Shanice are going to visit their mother Lou Michaelis in prison. Tim and Sally then have to explain to Lucy that they must wait for social services to decide when and how she will be allowed to communicate with her father. For the already traumatized teenager, the news proves devastating. Lucy responds by turning her anger towards Tim and unleashing a vicious outburst against him. Following their confrontation, Lucy rushes upstairs to her bedroom, unable to cope with everything happening around her. Meanwhile, Sally and Tim are forced to confront the possibility that they may have taken on far more than they can realistically handle when it comes to Lucy's emotional struggles. Can the Metcalfs eventually break through to Lucy and help her recover from the horrific ordeal she has experienced? Or has the teenager been left so deeply traumatized that she is unable to trust the people trying to help her?